Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The juggernaut Joe Joyce, who's currently 8-0 in his professional career, will take on the faded former title contender Alexander Ustinov on May 18th. That's on the Saunders and Isufi undercard. Now, this fight, probably no one saw it coming because I think many of us thought that Alexander Ustinov was retired after a dreadful performance last year against Michael Hunter and a dreadful performance the year before in his previous fight against Manuel Charr. But he's taken this fight against Joe Joyce. It's been announced at short notice. And yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this one because Ustinov at 42, he really doesn't have much left in the tank. He's a former name. Just like Berman Stavern when he fought Joe Joyce back in February, a former name, really doesn't have much juice left in the tank, and this is only going to be one-way traffic. If a smaller heavyweight in Michael Hunter can put an absolute beating down on Alexander Ustinov, then Joe Joyce is going to stop this guy in better time than Hunter did, which was 9 rounds, and Alexander Ustinov also had a dreadful performance against Manuel Charr. And that was where the regular title that Charr now holds was up on the line. Who knows how that happened? It came on at the last couple of days. But this fight announced with about 2.5 weeks to go. Yeah, I think this is going to be an easy win for Joe Joyce, and he said on his social media, May 18th I will be fighting Alexander Ustinov at Stevenage FC. With big fights in the pipeline, I won't be overlooking him. Watch it live, yada yada yada. And on the frankwarren.com website, Joyce says, I could have waited until the big fight night on July 13th, but I wanted to keep busy. I didn't want a journeyman, so we chose a 6'8" giant, former heavyweight title challenger, Alexander Ustinov, who's only lost 3 times. He's big, awkward, and he can punch. My aim is to take him out in spectacular fashion and put on a great show for the fans at the Lamex Stadium. Well, I'm sorry, Joe, but you did choose a journeyman because Ustinov is shot to pieces. And he's not 6'8", he's 6'7.5", and he is clearly now devolved into journeyman status. 42 years old, he's lost his last couple of fights on the trot, and he's looked dreadful in those fights. And he's not going to have got any better. So while they're trying to dress this one up as a semi-credible fight, Alexander Ustinov is shot to pieces. So in terms of, I mean, if they hadn't been trying to sell this as a credible fight, I could see this just as and take it for what it is, as a tick-over fight. And in terms of tick-over fights, yeah, it's not a terrible one. Alexander Ustinov is big, he can punch, but he is faded beyond belief. He is a journeyman now, and that's the level we need to treat Ustinov at, because that's where he's at now. So if Joyce does stop him within a few rounds, and half a dozen rounds or so, we can't really take it for anything more than it is, because he's just doing his job that was expected of him. So I know some people won't be happy with this fight at all, but with a fight with under 3 weeks to go, a short notice opponent, he's just signed on with Frank Warren in a co-promotional agreement. You know, this is kind of maybe as good as they could have got for now, for the money, for the risk. And I look at this sort of payday for Ustinov as, well, this is just another one. He's cashing in on his, some of his name recognition. Ustinov did used to be a decent contender in the heavyweight division, but though that ship has sailed and he hasn't been a decent contender for a few years now. And the big Russian at 42 years old, he's not going to trouble Joyce here. If Ustinov couldn't trouble Manuel Charr or Michael Hunter, Joe Joyce is not going to have any issues. And I know we like to say that Joe Joyce is slower than molasses with some of his punches, but if you saw that Hunter fight, you probably would have seen that Ustinov is probably slower than Joe Joyce at this point in his career. Really laboured in that effort. His punches were, really telegraphed, really slow. He found it hard just to sort of keep up with Michael Hunter to any extent. And Hunter just put a flat-out beating on him over 9 rounds, eventually breaking him down and stopping him. So I could see that happening again, just much, much quicker in this one. But let's take it for what it is. This is just a tick-over fight. It's another guy on Joe Joyce's record. It'll be his 9th pro fight, a guy with some name recognition. And this is what they're doing. Even though they're talking about accelerating him at a fast rate, some of that hasn't really happened to any large extent within Joe Joyce's career. It has to a degree, But guys like Berman Stavern, Alexander Ustinov, they're faded beyond belief. Joyce is always expected to beat these guys. They have name recognition. They've done some things earlier in their careers, but right now they're just cashing in for paydays, trading on their notoriety, the name that they once had and the things that they once did in the division. But it is no more. They are journeymen now. Berman Stavern was a flat-out journeyman. Alexander Ustinov is now a flat-out journeyman. It's nothing more than that. It's clipping the ticket for a payday. I think many of us just thought that Ustinov was retired. So when I saw this fight was announced, I thought, well, actually, I'm surprised that he's still in the game. 42 years old, looking dreadful in recent fights. Clearly, this is, cashing in for a payday. So better hope for him that it's a good one, because there may not be too many more for guys that are so far on the decline now, and there's only so much credit you can get from this fight. But I'll leave it there. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.